All right, so welcome everybody to the Catholic Learning Online Summit. This is day 2, and this session's on asynchronous online teaching video tips using Adobe. And our presenter today is Tim Kitchen, who will introduce himself with a little bit more detail. We might just click through to our next screen. The lands sorry, I've got too many windows in the way. The lands that we all stand on are and always will be Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander lands. We pay our respect to our First Nations people, past, present, and emerging. And our prayer for this session: Creator God, God of all who gave the dreaming, you have journeyed with your people through the ages. You have spoken to us through the land, through story, through culture, through people, and have made your love clear to us through the person of Jesus. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Okay. Oh, just a reminder that this webinar is recorded. Each of the sessions are recorded, and I'll put a link in the chat in just a few minutes where you can access each of those recordings. I would encourage you to use the chat function to ask questions, and I will bring it to Tim's attention if it's a question that I can't answer. He'll also be trying to monitor that as we go through. At the end of the session, if you could spare us a couple of minutes to fill out an evaluation, that would be wonderful. So I'm going to stop my share now, and I'm going to introduce you to Tim Kitchen.
Thanks, Mark. And I'll just start sharing my screen now so you can see what I'm seeing. And get into our opening slide here. Good. In fact, I'll just put that out of presentation mode for the moment. So hi, everyone, and welcome to this online event titled Asynchronous Online Teaching Video Tips using Adobe. My name is Tim Kitchen, and I am Adobe's Senior Education Specialist for the Asia Pacific region. And this is my 30th year of teaching. I think that deserves a round of applause, doesn't it? I see some round of applause. Oh, we've got a few, good. 23 years as a primary, secondary and university lecturer, and 7 years in this role at Adobe. And my main job is to empower the next generation to be lifelong creators. And I reckon it's the best job in the world. I would like to share with you a few things today. The focus is on asynchronous teaching. What we're doing at the moment is synchronous teaching. And this whole world of online education, it's new for a lot of teachers. And it's amazing how busy I've been in the last few weeks. I think I'm averaging 2 or 3 webinars a day covering the Asia Pacific region with teachers who are just kind of learning this for the first time. And for many teachers, it's actually taking digital literacy seriously for the first time because they kind of have to, which is scary for some, but also quite liberating as well, because they kind of realize that this is something that they can use even when the COVID-19 isolation period is over. And what I want to do is share with you some tips and tricks that'll help you during this period of time, but also will help you down the track as you're teaching, hopefully back face-to-face again very soon. I've got a number of resources to share with you over the next 50 minutes or so. I'm going to be directing you to an article that I wrote on the 24th of March from memory, and it has a whole range of different tips and tricks in terms of synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning, and there's a summary of all the tips there. We'll go through a couple of those. Yesterday, if you were at my session yesterday, we looked at Adobe Spark as a way of doing asynchronous teaching. Adobe Spark Video is what we focused on. And in fact, Adobe Spark Video is still considered by many people, including myself, as the simplest way to make video content. What we're going to be focusing on today, and there's some links there that relate to the Adobe Spark tutorials. What we're going to be doing today is focusing on Premiere Rush. Now, Premiere Rush is one level up from Spark Video. It has a lot more features than Spark Video, but it's nowhere near the level of Premiere Pro, which is the highest level of our video editing solutions. If we get time, I probably won't spend a lot of time on this, but just to give you an overview of what is the Creative Cloud and what applications you do, most of you have access to through your schools. And when it comes to the video and sound applications, you can see Premiere Pro is at one extreme end, Spark Video is at the other, and then Premiere Rush kind of fits in the middle there. And then I'm going to give you some more resources as well to give you some homework if you like to follow up on the things that you're learning today. So that's our plan. And what I thought we might do is just get started by looking at this article. So if you want to grab your phone and just hover your phone over that QR code, what will hopefully happen is it'll just open up that article for you on your phone or your iPad. Otherwise, the link to that article is available down there. And what I'll do is I'll just grab that link now and I'm going to put it in the chat pod for those who couldn't access that QR code. Let's see if I can remember how to find the chat. Here we go. And it's coming in now. And Mark assures me that that link should be an active link. Has that worked for us all, Mark? Give us a thumbs up.
Okay, so I can just tell people who were in the session yesterday having trouble with those links. If you select the link or click on it on a PC, it should just open up. If you're on a Mac, if you highlight the link and then control click, you can go to services and open URL, or you can just copy and paste it into a browser.
Wow, it's usually more complicated to do things on a PC than it is on a Mac, and suddenly it's the other way around.
I know, it's a special twist, isn't it?
Wow, who would have thought? Good, thanks Lou. She said it's working for her, which is great. Now, while we've got the chat, and I'm looking at the chat at the moment, I want to get to know you guys a little bit better too. Would you mind just quickly typing into the chat whether you're primary or secondary? Maybe put a P or an S to make it really quick. I just want to get a feel for where we are. We've got primary, secondary, bit of both. Great, secondary. All right, it's a nice mix there, and probably more primary than there is secondary. All right, that gives me a feel for it too. The other thing I wouldn't mind knowing is, have you actually used Premiere Rush before? So give us a Y or an N. Y for yes or an N for no. Looking, they're all N's. Oh, we've got a Y. And is that a Y from Tate, I think, or from Robin? From Robin, it looks like it's from Robin. And everyone else is an N. Robin, would you mind opening up your microphone for a sec? If you're able to, and saying hello to me.
Okay.
Oh, with a robot type voice. Is that now, Robin? Oh, that's a bit better, I think. Good, I can see you too. Yeah. Now, Robin, can you tell everyone what you've done with Premiere Rush and how you found the experience of working with Premiere Rush?
I've only just fiddled with it a little bit and mainly doing video editing with it. Sort of, yeah.
Good. Did you find it a relatively simple application to work with, or did you think it was a reasonable learning curve that you required to work with it?
Rush was relatively easy.
Good, good. Have you used Spark Video before?
No.
Okay. Good. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. It's just always good to get some feedback from people. Now, if you find Rush too difficult, because it's not a basic tool, but it's certainly not a really complicated professional tool, as I said, but then I'm going to sort of recommend you go back to Spark Video and have a look at that. And what I'd like to do is just share a couple of resources for you in the chat that will help you with Spark Video. And because we're not going to get time to look at Spark Video today, I'm just going to copy that link and bring it into the chat. And now you should have access to my Edu Tips. These are sets of tutorials that I do on Adobe products for teachers and students. And there's a series of tutorials there on Adobe Spark. Now, if you were in my session yesterday, can you go to the chat pod and give me a Y? I just want to see how many people were in my session yesterday. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good, quite a few. Excellent. So you've had a bit of a basic understanding, and you'll know that yesterday, and I'll just jump to what we did yesterday. I'm not going to go through the whole login process. Hopefully that's all just remembered. I'm just jumping into Spark now bringing it up. So I've already logged into Spark, and for most of you, you'll just be logging in with your normal school federated ID. Some of you might need to log in with Google, Facebook, Apple, or an Adobe ID. And yesterday, we created a video around the town of Nazareth, which is a town very close to my heart because in the early 1970s, I lived there as a young boy. And we created this little video here with Spark Video, very simple. It's just clicking the red button to do your voiceover, adding the images, and the end result was something like this. Just wait for that to load. Nazareth is the capital of the north of Israel. It is most well known as the town where Jesus grew up just over 2,000 years ago. These days, it's a thriving town of about 120,000 people. It is the largest Palestinian town in Israel with a mix of about 80,000 Muslim and Christian Arab citizens of Israel. About 40,000 Jewish citizens live in what is called Upper Nazareth. It's a wonderful example of how Jews and Arabs have lived in harmony for hundreds of years. So that was the video we created. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to recreate that video, but I'm going to do it in Premiere Rush. And so I'm just going to close down the Spark Video. And if you've got Premiere Rush, feel free to open it and explore with me. It's part of the Creative Cloud. You may not have downloaded it yet. You may only have Photoshop and Acrobat because, let's face it, most teachers, when they see they've got their Adobe products, will just grab Photoshop and Acrobat because that's probably all they think they need. But when you look at what else is on the Creative Cloud, I'm just jumping into my desktop app now, which kind of explains what all the apps do in the Creative Cloud. And you can see there are lots of them. They're just the desktop ones. I could jump into the mobile ones as well. These are all for iPad and iPhones, and most of them for Android as well. And then the web-based applications, and that's where the Spark comes into its own. I'm going back to my desktop apps and I'm looking for Premiere Rush, and that's how you load it up into your system once you've found your Creative Cloud desktop app. And for an Apple user, it's usually up the top with a little Creative Cloud symbol. For a PC user, it's usually down the bottom right-hand corner. Although some school systems, some IT administrators do actually block teachers and students from having access to this app because they don't like you controlling what's on your computer. So you might need to actually ask for this app to be loaded onto your machine, which is a bit of a pain, but it's worth it if you can go through that process. And there's Premiere Rush there. So it's going to go to open, and that'll open up Premiere Rush. Instantly, I'm opening up to all my projects that I've been working on. And virtually all of these are little demos like what I'm about to do for you. But because I'm a Premiere Pro user, I don't use Premiere Rush for my professional video editing solutions, although I could. It's just a brilliant tool. But because I'm a more experienced video editor and a video producer, I use Premiere Pro because it is the professional tool. It has so many more features. But I've been doing that for years, and I've trained over many, many years how to use Premiere Pro. But if I hadn't had that experience, I'd be loving this. Just brilliant, just really loving this as a tool. So I want to go to create a new project. What you see straight away is it opens up your hard drive. You can see all your directories, your desktop, your documents, your downloads, and I'm using with a Mac, so it'll be similar with a PC. You'd have similar sorts of directories. And what I'm looking for now is actually a folder that I created for yesterday's session called Nazareth Images that's sitting on my desktop at the moment. So when I click on that folder, it brings up all the images that I was using for that video. Now these images can be high res, they can be low res. I wouldn't want to make them too low res for a video, but for Spark Video, I made them fairly low res because I wanted it to load up really quickly on the internet. So it's important to try and think about your images beforehand. If you wanted to convert a really high-res image into a low-res image, but make it look almost as good as the high-res image, I've got an edu-tip there in my edu-tips link of tutorials about how to use Photoshop to do that. And that's probably worth looking at some point. So these are all relatively low-res images. And the way that Rush works is, first of all, it asks you what you want to bring into your video. It could be video content, could be still images. In this case, it's still images. So I'm going to grab that one as number 1. I've even labeled it number 1. This one is number 2. This one is number 3. This one is number 4, 5, and 6. So that's kind of the order that I'm looking for. Once I've labeled it, I'm just going to see if I can move things around my screens a bit so I can see more of this. That's looking a bit better. I'll even be able to move the chat. There we go. Good. Now, on the bottom left-hand side, there's a button called Project Name. And at the moment, it's called Untitled. So I'm going to call this Nazareth. And where it says Sync with Creative Cloud, if that's ticked, it means that it's going to sync to your storage part of the Adobe Creative Cloud. And I think at a minimum, everyone gets 2 gigabytes, but depending on what your school has got, you might end up having up to 200 or even more gigabytes of storage. So it's usually not a huge problem. What this means is that I can keep working on this project on my phone or on my iPad because everything's stored in the cloud. And that's the beauty of it. If you know that's not for you, if you know that this doesn't work at your school, if it's just not a cloud-based school at all, just turn that off. And this becomes a standalone. You have to be back to the same device every time. I tend to keep that on all the time. And I've called it Nazareth. Now on the bottom right-hand corner, it says Create. Now that I've clicked that, in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, bang. All those images sitting now on a timeline, ready for me to edit away and to add things to it just to make my story look amazing and sound amazing. Now, there's nothing super powerful with what I've done, all the things, but I'm about to press a button that changes the game when it comes to video editing, especially when it comes to mobile video editing on your iPhone or your Android phone or your tablet device. And it's this button down here. It's called the Control Tracks. When I click on that, and I'm also going to click the button above it called the Expand Audio button. I know there's no audio at the moment because they're just still images, but what you should be able to see now is 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of audio and 1, 2, 3, 4 layers of video. That's 4 layers of video and 4 layers of audio. That's incredibly amount of control and power you have over the story that you can tell. Now you might be asking, what's the point? Why would you want to have 4 layers of video? Well, every time you see a title come across a screen or another picture come in on top of another picture, that's another layer. And what you see is layer on top of layer on top of layer. So you can potentially have picture on picture on picture on picture on picture. And I know what you're thinking. You're thinking Brady Bunch already, aren't you? You remember that? Picture on top of picture. That's all layers of video. To have layers of audio allows you to have the soundtrack that goes with the video maybe that's there. And then a voiceover as another layer. And then maybe another music track or a special effect. So you've got all those different layers of audio that you can mix together all on your phone. Now, there's no other editing app in the world that gives you so much control and so much power than Premiere Rush to do it so simply on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop that I'm working with here, or of course your desktop. So let's start. I'm going to actually start with a voiceover, and I'm just going to bring up my script again. So I've got that available. My first line of my voiceover is, Nazareth is the capital of the north of Israel. So to actually record that, what I'm going to do is go down to my first layer of audio and see that little microphone symbol down there. I'm going to click on that once, and it turns itself into a record button. As soon as I click onto it a second time, it'll give me 3 seconds before I can start the voiceover. Let's see what happens. Nazareth is the capital of the north of Israel. All right, so that's been recorded now. If I play this back, Nazareth is the capital of the north of Israel. So that's been recorded as a voiceover, and you can see the waveform of my speaking. I'm just going to trim that back a little bit. I don't need that to go as long as it did. I've left it open for about a second because I want the music to start and I want the music to appear on a second track. To bring the music in, I'm going to go up to the top left-hand corner where you can see where it says Add Media. And this allows you to add music, add footage, add other still images, anything you want to continue, any asset that you require for your story, you can go to Add Media. You can also add titles, you can add other voiceovers through that button. I'm going to go to Add Media. There's my still images already there for me. I've already got them in, so I don't need them again. So I'm going to go outside of that directory. I'm going to go outside of my desktop and jump back to our main directory, because what we did with the Rush team, and I had the pleasure of working with the product team to build this app. So they were looking for it to be something for YouTubers, but then I was pushing for it to be something for teachers and students as well. And so I had the great pleasure of consulting with them several times in the United States about how we can make this simple for teachers and students to work with. And one of the recommendations was to have some sample media, which is a bunch of footage of a group of young people visiting the Philippines for a holiday, just to play with, just to try, and some sample audio as well, to put together a quick story so that everyone has the same footage and the same audio and we can work and learn it together. So I'm glad that worked out. The other thing that I was really keen to have was some soundtracks. Like we do with Spark Video, we've got all that music that you can bring in. Same with Rush. We've got a range of royalty-free music here. So I'm just going to quickly sample one of these and see what it's like. It's not really what I'm looking for. Let's find another one here. Yeah, that'll do. So now that I'm reasonably happy with that, I can just drag that soundtrack into Audio Layer 2. So now what I've got, if I take my playhead, this blue line here, take it back to the start of my clip, I've got my music starting, and then my voiceover will start. Let's see what it sounds like. Nazareth is the capital of the north of Israel. Now, what is concerning me at the moment is Nazareth. The music needs to kind of drop a little bit before I start to talk. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim my voice so I only start talking at the point where I want to. I don't have any extra sort of noise there. I want the music to be reasonably loud at that point, but then to drop down as soon as I start talking, and then to bring back up again when I stop talking. And we're using a bit of artificial intelligence within Premiere Rush to help us to do that process. So I'm going to click on the soundtrack, and I'm going to jump over to the right-hand side, and you can see a bunch of tools that are available for me. We've got titling, we've got transitions, we've got colors, we've got speed, and we've got audio, and we've also got crop and rotate. I'll go to the audio tool, and I could drop the audio, but that would drop the whole soundtrack. I just want to drop it at the point where the voiceover comes in. So I'm going to go to the advanced settings, and it recognizes that my music is a music track because it recognizes that the waveform is kind of related to music. It's also recognizing that my voiceover is a voice, again, based on the shape and the style of the waveform. Because it's recognizing the two differences, I can now activate this button called Auto Duck. When I click on Auto Duck, it instantly brings down the music when there's a voiceover and then brings it back up again. Although I've noticed it's ducking quite a bit. So I'm going to make sure it doesn't duck quite that much. And now when I play this, let's see what it's like. Nazareth is the capital of the north of Israel. So you can see it, that's all happened automatically using a bit of artificial intelligence. We've got the name of our artificial intelligence engine within most of our products is called Adobe Sensei. I love the name of it, Adobe Sensei. Now this picture of Nazareth is actually quite small, so I'm just clicking on it and see those little handles that appear around it. That allows me to scale it, make it a little bit bigger, and I can move it anywhere I want to on the screen. The other thing I might want to do is grab a title very quickly and have the title appearing down here, the word Nazareth. So I'm going to jump up to my titles tool. And when I click on it once, I have to wait a second, but all these motion graphic templates appear for me, and also some very basic, simple titles as well. I'm going to find one that's pretty cool. Let's find one that actually animates as well. These motion graphic templates have been made with Adobe After Effects, which is a really sophisticated program, and most teachers won't want to have a bar of After Effects. But the beauty is that you can recreate this title and have it as part of your video without even touching After Effects or even knowing about After Effects. So I'm going to grab this one here called Modern Title. As I click and drag it, I'm going to bring it on top of onto layer 2. At the moment, it's dominating everything, so I'm just going to click it and make it a bit smaller and just drag it underneath. Change it from the word Modern Title to Nazareth. And then I'm going to look at the color and the font and realize that I probably want to make some changes there. So I'm in the edit mode of the titles, and my font is Source Sans Pro. So let's see what other options I've got. Lots of options here. Let's choose American Typewriter, see what that's like. Try to highlight it first, try that again. That's a bit better, so I'm happy with that. And the purple, I'm not so sure about the purple, so I'm going to go into my edit mode. And instead of editing the text, I'm going to edit the shape. Now I've got a couple of options here. At the moment, the shape is, the outline is purple, and that's all we're seeing is just the outline. So I'm going to change that. I'm going to grab that little droplet tool there, and I'm going to select a color that's in the picture. That nice orange is actually quite nice, and that's going to give me a more of a color scheme for what I'm looking for in that part of the video. So let's see what this looks like now. Nazareth. Wouldn't mind having the title Nazareth appear when I speak. So I'm going to just drag it over a bit. Nazareth is the capital of the north of Israel. Now at this point, I might just want to trim out my title, but notice my picture of Jesus appears a little bit early. So I'm just going to literally drag my Nazareth picture over into the right timing. Is the capital of the north of Israel. And then I'll probably introduce the Jesus picture about here. And that picture is a bit small, so I'm going to make that a bit bigger as well. And let's see. Music's come up a bit, which is nice, but I want to actually add another voiceover now. So I'll just make the Jesus picture go a little bit longer and then bring in another voiceover. So right at this point in time where my playhead is, I'm going to go back into my voiceover mode, get ready to record that, and my voiceover script is on the next screen. It's ready to go, and here we go. The north of Israel. It is most well known as the town where Jesus grew up, just over 2,000 years ago. So I've done that in voiceover. I'll just trim out the picture of Jesus. It is most well known as the town where Jesus grew up, just over 2,000 years ago. And then I'm going to get ready for the next picture. And that's how it works. So it's a fairly simple process. Once you've got started, you can then start trimming away your pictures, getting them to the right size. And if you want to, like I can have that picture over there and maybe this picture sitting on top. And not that I really want to, but just give you an example of how we can go picture in picture. And we can just keep constructing our story until we're happy with the end result. So that gives you an introduction to Premiere Rush. There are a few other things that I'd like to go through. It looks like we do have time, but what I might do now is just pause to see if there's anything in the chat pod, Mark, that I need to address, or if there's any specific questions. Is there anything that you really think this app should do that I haven't shown you already? And we've just got a couple of minutes now to maybe go through those questions. How are we going, Mark?
It looks good to me. There's not much in the chat. Someone asked a question earlier about whether it worked on the latest version of Mac, which I could definitely confirm it does.
Yeah, I'm on the latest version of Mac myself, so yeah, I can say it definitely works.
Tracy's mentioned that Spark seems easier. This seems time-consuming. Yeah. From video editing, you can spend an awful lot of time editing up videos. I mean, that's one thing that makes Spark so amazing, is anything that makes good videos quickly and easily is wonderful.
Yeah, we've got to be aware too that Spark is very limiting, but it might be all you need. So that's great. It's all about what you need and what you want. If some people would say that Premiere Rush is very limiting, because with Premiere Pro, you've got 99 layers of video potentially to work with, which is why it's used at a very high level. But Premiere Rush could be the ultimate solution for most teachers. In fact, I was working with a teacher in Victoria recently. She said, "This is a killer app. This is a game changer for teachers. Finally, they can have a professional video editing app on their phone or on their laptop that they can actually manage and work with." It was really good to hear that. Any other questions, comments there, Mark?
There's one there about when Rush for Android might be available.
Oh, it's been available now for about 3 or 4 years.
Okay. What about coming? Is it available on Chromebooks?
I'm just trying to think now. Yes, to a point. Because it's an Android app, it'll be available as an Android version. I've never seen it used on a Chromebook, but I've heard that it is available. Yeah, it's worth testing. Theoretically, if it's an Android app, it should work on a Chromebook.
Okay, I can see Chris Bircher in the chat there, so maybe he.
Oh, Chris is with us. G'day, mate.
Okay, he's saying it won't work.
Oh, okay. Good. G'day, mate. Good to see you. One thing to consider is we're just opening up virtualization now for the Creative Cloud, and that's become public recently. So that's where Chromebooks could not only work with Rush, it could work with all of the Creative Cloud apps potentially. So Chris, just email me if you like, and I'll give you some more information on that. Which reminds me, I'll just put in the address, my email in the chat, my email address, in case anyone wants to have a chat with me offline. Chris Betcher is an Adobe education leader and has been for many years, and he's great. He also now works for Google, does equivalent job to what I do at Adobe, but he does it at Google. So it's great to have you on board, Chris. He's actually an Adobe education leader emeritus. There's only 2 in Australia that have reached that title. All right, Mark, no other questions at this point?
No.
Yeah, hello, I've got a question. Sorry. If I wanted to do, say, sometimes I like to run a simulation and capture the simulation as I'm changing it and do a voiceover. Is that possible?
So you want to capture the screen? I'll get you to mute your audio because we're doubling back there at the moment. So just mute your audio. So if I got the question right, are you wanting to capture your screen and then talk at the same time?
Yeah, that's right. And doing a simulation like physics or PhET or something like that.
Yeah, so to capture your screen, Rush isn't a tool for that. We have a range of other tools that'll do similar things to that. One that comes to mind straight away that I've used many times in the past is called Adobe Presenter Video Express. Adobe Presenter Video Express. I noticed that it's not compatible with the latest Macs, and they haven't really upgraded the application for a couple of years, but it works fine on Windows apparently, or on older Macs. That's the simplest way I've noticed to do the screen capture. Camtasia, of course, is the very high-end professional way of doing it. What I tend to be doing these days is actually just recording on QuickTime, just doing a screen capture on QuickTime, and then recording my audio on another device. And then I can trim all of that together with Premiere Pro or Premiere Rush. And that gives you the control. But Premiere Rush is not designed to be a screen capture tool. It's designed to be a video editing tool.
Okay, thank you.
Just jump in there. Vicky just ran a session literally an hour ago on Screencastify, which is a really good free tool that you can use straight out of your browser window. So that might be a good solution.
Yeah. All right. So once you've actually done your screen capture, it's often good to have a tool like Premiere Rush 2 to trim it down to make sure it's actually the way you want it, to bring in titles where you weren't able to bring in titles before, and then export it as a video file. Now, I'll just quickly show you the export feature. I won't actually finish this video. I just wanted to give you a taste of how it works. And let's say that I have finished it. Up the top, you've got the share button. When you click on the share button, you can share it to a local drive. So give it a name, work out exactly where you want to point it to. And then if you want to go to the advanced settings, you can, there's a lot of controls here. Even if you were shooting a film in 4K, you can export out to 4K. So it's quite powerful. You can choose your quality, and that adds to the compression levels to make it a lower, less of a memory size, but then you lose a bit of quality when you do that as well. The other ways is to export it straight out to your YouTube account, your Facebook account, your Instagram account, or Behance. And Behance is actually, the way that people describe Behance is it's the LinkedIn for designers. If you have anyone from about the age of 15 upwards who's interested in the world of design, encourage them to have a free Behance portfolio, because it's how they will get noticed out in the real world. So that's a nice little tip for you. So that's how you do your exporting. And then once you've exported it, you've got it as a video file, or you can stream it down via YouTube. So that's Premiere Rush in a bit of a nutshell. What I think we'll do now is just jump into some of the tips and tricks of synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning that are in this article. I'm basically going to the end of the article here. You can look at it and read it in your own time. But the first tip that I always recommend, if it's at all possible, is to make sure you plug your computer into your network rather than just relying on Wi-Fi. People forget that Wi-Fi is great. It's so flexible because you can have access anywhere in your house or your school, but you don't get as fast a connection, as a reliable a connection as if you were connecting in. And certainly in schools, but a lot of modern homes now will have network points that have been built in because builders kind of have to, and you'll find those little Ethernet points are around. If you can grab a what's called a Cat6 cable or a Cat5 cable from Officeworks or from JB Hi-Fi, and then if you've got a PC, usually you can plug straight into your PC. With a Mac, you need to get a little dongle that allows you to plug in your Ethernet point. You'll get much better reliability that way. If you are doing synchronous teaching too, think of it as a live radio or a live television broadcast. Notice that I'm actually looking at the camera a lot during this synchronous session. And as I'm looking at the camera, I'm probably getting more attention from my audience, even though I can't see you. It's almost as if I'm talking to you. And that's an interesting little psychological thing. You notice that news readers and reporters, they'll be looking directly at the camera so that they're looking at you. Whereas if I'm looking away from the camera, it's almost as if, oh, I don't really care about you as much. It's a different look. It's more like a dramatic look, like I'm looking at someone else. So that's another little tip for you. Try not to do too much in a synchronous mode. Try to do most of your online teaching in an asynchronous mode. The way I say that is because so much can go wrong in a synchronous mode. In fact, I do a lot of work with Swinburne University, and their policy at the moment is to do no synchronous teaching. Their policy is all about asynchronous teaching. Make sure your students have access to the material that you create, the videos that you make with Spark Video or with Rush. And Swinburne University are Australia, in fact, the Asia Pacific's first Adobe Creative Campus, where every teacher and every student gets the full Creative Cloud to work with. So they're very strong on that. They want to make sure that you're using Spark and using their learning management system, which in their case is Canvas. For your schools, it could be Google Classrooms, it could be Schoolbox. There's lots of different ways of storing your material, but it's about making the material in advance for your classes so they can actually watch the videos, they can actually read the content and then do the learning based on what you've provided for them. That's very much an asynchronous model. Very similar to the flipped learning classroom. If you're not sure of flipped learning, I recommend you look at flippedlearning.org, flippedlearning.org, and there's some really good resources there. And that'll help you not only during this time of synchronous and asynchronous teaching. But later on, when you're in the classroom face to face, to actually have a flipped learning model is incredibly beneficial, where the students, they get the main content that you're wanting to deliver before they come to class. So you're not wasting that valuable time that you can have with small groups of students discussing the content by delivering the content yet again, because they've already heard it. It just flips the learning, and it's a really good approach. And that's similar to what I'd be recommending during this time as well. So there's lots of different examples there of how you can work in a synchronous and an asynchronous model. I might just pause here at the moment, Mark, to see if there's any questions or comments.
I did have a question about saving or direct exporting into Google Classroom. Is that possible?
Not with Rush. It is with Spark Video. We've got a button that takes you straight to your Google Classroom account. But with Rush, because that's a semi-professional tool, we're just assuming that people who use Rush will know that they've got that file. Then they can either upload it, or they've got it into YouTube and they can just link it to their Google Classroom and so on. So there's just that one extra step involved with Rush. Good question, though. Anything else I need to cover?
I think you're clear.
Cool. All right, so those tips are there for you to have a look at. Notice that the way that I'm working now with Mark is that Mark is moderating this session. If you are doing a synchronous session, please make sure you've got someone moderating, like a student or a rotation of different students to do that work for you, because you won't always keep up to date with what's on the chat while you're actually doing the teaching. But keep the synchronous stuff to a minimum, maybe to start the class, get everyone on the camera so you can see they're all there. You might find that a certain percentage of your classes don't actually have webcams or don't even have internet access. And so keeping things asynchronous becomes a little bit easier and a bit more accessible for people as well. And that's one of the things I recommend in this article. All right, let's move on. That's just a link to our Spark tools. Spark is not just about video, it's also about making a web page as well. So in Spark page, and also little posters, little graphics, and some of them can be animated graphics if you're using the iOS or the Android version. There's my resources on Spark. I've already given you the edu tips. I'll just give you a quick overview now of the Creative Cloud, which could be helpful if you're not really sure what's involved, because most of your schools have access to these applications, but you're not really sure what they do. So in terms of applications for images, for photography, for illustrations, and for graphics, there they all are. Everything from Photoshop right down to Spark Post. It's almost in order of the most difficult to the most simple. And the ones that I've highlighted there are the ones that I'm seeing more and more that teachers, the average teacher, is using, not the high-end multimedia teacher. They have to use our tools. They live and breathe our tools. It's the maths teacher, the science teacher, the primary school teacher who just wants some way of doing some digital literacy with their students, but also in a sense preparing them for the next step when they do leave school, because these are industry standard tools. So that's what they are, and you can look them up in your own time if you want to find out more about them. In terms of print and presentations, we've got everything from InDesign, which is at one extreme end, to again Spark Post, which is at the other extreme end. And again, I've highlighted the ones that I'm seeing being used by the average everyday teacher. In terms of video and sound, this is what we're covering today. Premiere Pro, obviously at one extreme end, and that'll be more just for your media teachers and your IT teachers and your arts teachers predominantly. Spark Video at the other end, and Premiere Rush we've just had a look at. After Effects we touched on before. Animate's an animation tool. Character Animator is quite interesting, and I've done a couple of tutorials in my EduTip series on Character Animator, because it's real-time animation. And to be able to create a video that instead of you doing the presenting, to get an animated puppet do the presenting for you, amazing. In fact, Chris Betcher, who's on the call with us now, he did a special character animator message to me on my birthday last week. So I appreciate that, Chris. It was very kind of you. And it doesn't take long because it's real-time animation, and there's a range of built-in puppets that you can work with. If you have a look at my EduTip on that, it explains a lot more. If you're interested in the world of augmented reality and virtual reality in 3D. We've got apps that are really great for that too, including Aero, which I'm seeing a lot of primary teachers using now as a way of stimulating storytelling by creating an augmented reality experience and then getting the students to create a story based on that experience that they've created on their iPad with Adobe Aero, which is a free app. And online mobile app development, that's not as relevant for most of you, but Adobe Experience Design is a wonderful tool to at least have a look at, because it allows you to literally design and prototype an app on your phone and then present that app as a form of your learning. An alternative to PowerPoint. Let's face it, we've been using PowerPoint since we were babies, pretty much. And it's nice to have alternative ways of presenting your learning. So the other main resources I wanted to just quickly cover, if you wanted to get any help at all and support with Premiere Rush, with Spark Video, with Character Animator, with any of our video solutions or any of our Adobe solutions, this is a good one-stop shop for you. It's called helpx.adobe.com. In fact, I'm just going to grab the link to that because it's such a key resource that I'm going to put it into the chat pod. So I recommend you bookmark that because it's going to give you lots of support and help as your first point of call. For teachers, the Education Exchange is really valuable, and I encourage you, if you're not already a member, to please join. We've got nearly 780,000 teachers on this now, just sharing how they're using the Adobe products to enhance their maths classes, their science classes, their IT classes, from primary, secondary, and higher ed as well. Lots of professional learning, lots of courses, lots of resources. We've developed a new resource out of the Education Exchange specifically for this time of isolation and distance learning. And see if I can bring that into the chat pod as well. Some fantastic, every week we're adding new material here for teachers who are teaching online, especially if they're doing it for the first time. We have a YouTube channel that's full of amazing resources for teachers and for students on the Creative Cloud. And we have another YouTube channel that's specifically just for teachers called Adobe for Education. We also have a live channel on Behance called Adobe Live. So it's just constantly material coming out there, some for kids, some for designers, just a range of different programs that we're running all the time. I've mentioned the EduTips, so that covers that. I'm running a weekly webinar at the moment for teachers. It's usually on a Wednesday night from 7 p.m. till 9 p.m. And you can find more information about that through this link that's coming up to you now. So tomorrow night is our next session. We've got Dr. Max Sleasure from Swinburne University who's co-hosting with me. And the focus for tomorrow is on augmented reality and virtual reality. So we're going to be looking at the Adobe Aero product that I mentioned before. But every session we run something that's very basic and simple for new users, and then try to get something for those who are experienced Adobe users as well, to challenge them at every session. We have a leadership program that I recommend, and I noticed a number of people from the feedback yesterday were quite keen to find out more about this, probably because we're hopefully flying one of you to America this year for our Adobe Max conference, if we're not grounded, that is. But we'll have $5,000 to spend on you anyway, that we have to spend on a campus leader or an education leader. Chris Betcher is an education leader. He's at the highest level. Campus leader is an introductory to that level. Let me just bring that into the chat pod too, so you can follow up if you're interested. And finally, I want to just keep this slide up here for the moment. This is a summary of our main resources. And down the bottom right-hand corner is a QR code. If you hover your camera over that, that allows you to get in touch with us, to maybe join the email list that I have for New South Wales and for Queensland, if you're from Queensland. And if you're interested in the Campus Leader program, we'll follow up with you on that as well. But that link, that slide resources link, I'll bring that into the chat pod as well. That gives you access to all my slides from today and also from yesterday.
Could I just jump in there?
Yeah, thanks, Mark.
Just got a quick question, Tim. And thanks to Sharon for sharing the website address where you can get access to the presentation. So I'll just paste that back in as well. If you go to the presentations tab, you'll be able to see the recording of Tim's presentation from yesterday. This one will be up by around about 5 or 6 tonight. And you can go back through and just double check on things. We'll also put a listing of all the links so that you can easily get access to them if you need to. Now, there was one question. I'm just scrolling up through here. Tracy had a question around collaboration in Spark. So I have had success in that space in the past. Have you got any hot tips there?
Yeah, every Spark tool has a little button called invitation, I think it is, or invite, where you can invite anyone else to come and join you and help collaborate, whether it's building the web page together or building the poster together or building the video together. So it's a collaboration tool within Spark.
I wonder if maybe you used an email address that was not currently linked to a Spark account, or that you should have probably got an invite, or the teacher should have got an invite in that case.
Yeah, you still need to be logged into Spark for it to be a collaboration tool.
Yep. Okay, so it is time. So I would like to thank Tim very much for his time and his preparation and his knowledge and sharing of that knowledge. Just a reminder that all the resources, Tim's presentation, the video of this session, the links, etc., will all be available on the website at that URL that's at the bottom of the chat. There's also a series of other presentations today. So if you feel like learning a little bit more and watching a little bit more, there's so many great presenters that are sharing their time today. Tim has obviously done a wonderful job here. There's Google coming up this afternoon. There's a whole range of different sessions. ClickView is worth a look too if you're not using that currently, because I know most of your schools have access to it. So once again, thank you very much to Tim for his time. Don't forget that QR code there is a way to get in contact with Tim. So if you do have questions, sometimes they're hard to answer in this online environment, but offline, Tim's more than happy to help people out. Anything else to finish off, Tim?
I'll just bring in that link to that contact form in case the QR code hasn't worked for people, so they can get in touch with us anytime they like. And you've got my email address further up too. If you want to personally contact me, that's fine.
Yeah, great.
Hopefully I'll see some of you tomorrow night at my webinar at 7 o'clock. If not, next Wednesday is our next one. Every week while we're in isolation, I'll be running these sessions, all with a focus on online teaching and learning. Thanks for the opportunity, Mark. It's been great.
No worries. Thank you very much. Could I, just before people go, we do have an evaluation. So it would be awesome if people could do the evaluation. Unfortunately, it's going to be hidden behind one of these tabs. There we go. I've got so many windows open, it's ridiculous. But if we can use our phone camera on that QR code, it should open the evaluation. If not, there's a bit.ly at the top there. It's exactly the same evaluation that you've done for every other session. So therefore, if you already have it, it should be pretty easy to get to. But if you wouldn't mind just sharing the evaluations, that's awesome. And we'll be giving you feedback at the end of the whole summit, so you'll understand which things